Dr. Lori. This is What's It Worth with Dr. Lori, and I'm here with Leah. Leah, where are you from?
I'm from Lancaster.
You're from Lancaster?
Originally from New York, but I live
Originally from New York, and you live here now. You like it?
I do. I love it
What's not
here.
to like?
Exactly.
Right? So
Yeah.
much fun.
Great place to live.
So what did you bring? What have you got? What are you doing, Leah?
So my father passed away about a couple months ago.
Oh, I'm sorry. Terrible, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's terrible.
It is.
I know. Terrible to lose a parent.
Yeah.
Just not good, bad. Okay. I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And I hope that as you see things that remind you of him, you cherish the happy times.
Yes.
Okay?
That's what we're trying to do.
Okay, that's what we're trying to do. So is this,
this
part
is
of
his.
Oh, this was your dad's?
Yes.
Where do you think your dad got this?
So I'm assuming that he did go on an around the world trip in 2003.
Okay, so he saw the world.
Yes.
Okay, maybe
And
picked up some souvenirs. Did he have it before his trip?
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay, so you don't know if it was handed down from someone.
Right.
Okay, all right. But was it displayed prominently in your home or your father's home?
Yes.
Okay, so once he had it, it was on display.
Yes.
He loved it.
Yes.
What do you know about it?
Nothing.
Zero. He never
Zero.
talked about it.
No.
He puts it on
He
display.
lived in North Carolina, and we couldn't really, we
You
got
didn't
there
see him a lot?
Yeah, once or twice a year. So
Okay.
it wasn't really.
So you don't see it all the time. You're thinking, well, all right. So how come this came to you? Was this something you said, I think that's interesting, I think I want it?
Well, I mean, we just were curious about it. We had no idea, where it came from, what its origins are. So.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about it. What do you think it's made of?
I think it's ivory, but
you think it's
I
ivory?
don't know.
Well, let's talk about ivory, right? So there's lots of things and lots of questions with respect to ivory. Some of the questions with respect to ivory are, can I sell it? Right? Is it legal?
Right.
What can I sell? How do I know if I can sell it? And most of those questions, while they all seem to be the same, have small nuances that make them a little different. So let's talk a little bit about the 1990 African Ivory Sites Registry. What does that mean? Well, when the African elephant in 1990 is actually added to a registry called CITES, C-I-T-E-S, basically means that if you have a piece of elephant ivory, you may not, in fact, sell it unless you can prove that your piece of elephant ivory was manufactured as part of a musical instrument made prior to 1975, is an antique object that was made 100 years ago or more, right? You could sell it if you have those two criteria, or if your piece of elephant ivory from an African elephant was in fact used for scientific research. If you can't prove any of that, you can't sell your piece. So most of you are saying, I can't sell the ivory, I can't sell the ivory, I can't sell the ivory, when if you can meet those criteria, all of a sudden, well, you can sell the ivory. So you want to make sure that before you post your ivory piece or what you think is ivory online to sell on any of the auction sites, Etsy, eBay, Ruby Lane, whoever, Let Go, whatever, you want to think about knowing what you really have. Ivory is relatively difficult to spot. Many people think they have ivory, and they may have one of a litany of other things that look like ivory. For example, ivory will deteriorate to a butterscotch kind of color. If it's 100 years old, it's probably that caramel or butterscotch color. It's more of a brown beige than it is a white. Sometimes you are dealing with bone. Okay, so it's not really the tusk of an elephant, but in fact it would be a bone of an animal. Okay, and then it's been dyed in some way. Sometimes it's molded plastic, a polymer or a bakelite or another type of plastic element, and the color of ivory. Okay, so now, and then sometimes it's top drawer ivory. Ivory usually has a crisscross pattern. What does that mean? It sort of looks like this. I always say it looks like a rose trellis, or it looks like a wine rack. All right, so ivory like that crisscross or cross-hatched look. So in looking at this piece, it doesn't have a cross-hatched look. Okay. It isn't really a piece that looks to be that butterscotch color of something that's 100 years old, but maybe it's a piece of ivory and it's younger than that. In this particular case, I don't think you have a piece of ivory at all.
Okay.
I think what you have is actually pieces of bone that have then been sectioned together for a tourist. This particular piece is not 100 years old. It probably dates to about the 1950s, the latter part of the post-war period. So between 1945 and about 1965. Maybe your father got it in 2003,
right?
But it was only 50 or 60 years old then. Okay, so that's the first bit of bad news for Leah. But really, it is a wonderful carving.
Right.
So this particular material is really wonderfully carved. It has then been shellacked, right? You can see how shiny it is, and you can see this motif, right? And they have pieced it together. So if you look, each of these pieces have basically been carved out. You can actually see where they inset these pieces on top of a larger piece underneath. This area inside, you can see these small little dot patterns and something called ebonization. They actually ebonize or paint or dye black. They dye the color black to make it look like ebony would to see a contrast. There's no wood involved here at all. They make these little holes while they're carving, and then as they're carving in the little holes, they then will literally put some black or dark ink inside to make that contrast. The coloration on this piece is really quite fine. You can see it here. There's sort of an ebonization here. It's now deteriorated to a greenish color, but it was intended to be a black, a very, very dark black. Not really a blue or purple black, but more of a green black. You'll notice that these pieces, which are placed together, are of course indicative of, again, this floral symbolism that we oftentimes see in Asian culture. The idea of having a massive tusk-like form is a piece or an antique piece that basically is extremely interesting with respect to presentation. So it says that someone of great status or someone of great contribution to culture lives here. So these are seen as a wonderful keepsake. You can see where your dad probably wanted it as a souvenir of his travels, for example.
Right.
Also look at, of course, the way in which you have these figures, mainly scholars and other figures with long beards indicating great wisdom, right? And then also they are holding things like staffs. This one's holding a staff, for example. And then they're among a great, of course, bonsai tree environment or great landscape environment in the back.
Yeah.
So when you look at the piece, you'll also see this is the fret pattern, and that's really what isn't Asian about it. The Greek key pattern is much more of a Western art historical piece than a motif that you would normally see in Asian culture. So this piece is being sold to the Westerners.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
So that's maybe why your father liked it. I scrutinized the entire piece, and here at the bottom you can see that these pieces have been actually added on to in sections and then applied onto this large horn-like shape.
Right.
It's a nice piece. What do you think it's worth? It's got a lot of good things and a lot of problems.
Right.
So I oftentimes say I break some hearts, I make some millionaires. There's all this good, but there's all this not so good too.
I have no idea.
What do you think? Take a guess. Are we talking $100?
Yeah.
Are we talking $1,000? Would your father have spent a lot of money on a souvenir?
He probably would have.
He would have. He would have said, I'm throwing caution to the wind.
Yeah,
Right?
Yep.
I have appraised a lot of what we would consider scrimshaw. I have appraised a lot of elephant ivory. I have appraised a lot of objects that were bone trying to look like ivory. And in fact, all of these objects are usually related to that idea not only of Asian pieces, but also of pieces that relate to the seafaring cultures, right? So pieces that are hand-carved of walrus ivory, for example. Very different from elephant ivory.
Right.
Value on your piece, about $400.
Okay.
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad.
However, if you had a real piece of ivory, and if it dated to the period of, again, the Asian pieces of this time period from China, maybe sometime in the early part of the 1400s to the latter part of the 1500s, we'd be talking about several thousands of dollars.
Right.
In this particular case, you have what's a reproduction, and you have it of materials that are not elephant ivory, and value based on a sales record where a similar piece has sold about $400.
All right.
What do you think?
It's not bad.
Not bad. Do you like it? Will you display it in your home?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Leah, thank you very much.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure your dad will be happy that you know all the information about it now.
Definitely.
That's What's It Worth with Dr. Lori for this episode. I'm Dr. Lori. Thanks for being with me. See you next time.